Black waitress is fired for helping Elon Musk. Next day, she gets the shock of her life. The sun shone gently through the trees, its rays streaming onto the cobblestone streets of a city savoring a slower pace than usual. A light breeze swept through, carrying the faint fragrance of flowers from nearby gardens. The morning felt calm, unhurried, like the world had momentarily set down its burdens. Elon Musk, one of the most renowned names in the world, had decided to step away from the opulence of his offices and the high-stakes meetings that usually consumed his days. Today, he sought something different, a taste of freedom, a day unshackled from fame and the relentless glare of the spotlight. He walked with ease, dressed so simply that few would have recognized him. A neatly pressed checkered shirt, a perfectly fitting pair of jeans, and a baseball cap shielding half his face. There was no entourage, no security detail trailing behind him, no luxury car following in his wake. It was just him, walking alone on the cobblestone streets, savoring the simplicity. As he strolled, he stopped in front of a small cafe called Cozy Brew. It was a warm and inviting corner tucked beneath a canopy of trees. He hadn't chosen it for any particular reason, just the comforting familiarity it seemed to offer. Something about the name, the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the door, and the gentle murmur of conversation from within drew him in. With a small push, he opened the wooden door, the soft jingle of a bell announcing his arrival. Inside, the cafe unfolded with polished wooden tables, warm golden light, and the smooth hum of jazz music filling the air. It exuded a charm that felt both timeless and welcoming. A few patrons glanced up briefly from their conversations as the door swung open. Their eyes flitted over the unfamiliar man, but none lingered long enough to notice who he really was. To them, he was just another passerby. Elon picked a table near the window where sunlight streamed in through the curtains, casting soft golden patterns on the wooden surface. He sat down quietly, his posture relaxed yet thoughtful. A waitress approached his table. She had a warm smile and a calm demeanor, her eyes reflecting a natural kindness. "Waitress, good morning. What can I get for you today?" Elon returned her smile, his deep voice steady and sincere. "Elon, a black coffee, please, and an apple pie, if you have any." Waitress, "Of course, I'll bring that right out." With a polite nod, Elon turned his gaze toward the window. The street outside radiated a rare kind of peace, a peace he hadn't often been able to experience. As he waited, he pondered silently. If I weren't Elon Musk, he thought to himself, how different would life be? Could I walk through a city without being chased by cameras? Could I talk to strangers without worrying they'd secretly record or photograph me? Maybe simplicity is the greatest luxury of all. Yet, despite these musings, there was no resentment in his heart. Elon believed deeply that every person has a mission. His mission, one that burned in his very soul, was to propel the world forward. But even those with grand missions needed moments like this, moments to breathe, to savor life's simpler joys. The calm atmosphere of the cafe wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. He took a sip of his coffee, its warmth spreading through him, and then a bite of the apple pie, a delightful blend of sweetness and spice. Little did he know that this peaceful Sunday morning was about to take an unexpected, dramatic turn. Suddenly, the faint hum of the city was interrupted by the distant roar of motorcycle engines. It started softly but grew louder with every passing second, cutting through the stillness like a knife. The cafe's wooden door creaked open once more, but this time it wasn't a gentle entrance. The door swung open forcefully, the jingle of the bell overhead sounding almost like a warning. 5 men strode into the cafe. They were dressed in black leather jackets and ripped jeans, their arms and necks covered in intimidating tattoos. The sharp smell of gasoline and cigarette smoke clung to them, filling the air with a biting edge. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The soft hum of jazz music seemed to fade as tension filled the room. Patrons cast nervous glances at the group, their eyes darting away quickly, not wanting to draw attention. The staff behind the counter exchanged uneasy looks but stayed silent, their movements careful and measured. The men were loud and boisterous, their laughter cutting through the cafe like jagged glass. They acted as though they owned the space, completely oblivious to the discomfort they were causing. At the far end of the cafe, Elon remained seated, quietly observing. He appeared calm, unaffected, taking another sip of his coffee, but his sharp eyes took in every detail. One of the men scoffed, trying to mask his unease. "Man, who's asking?" Elon didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the waitress, his voice soft but filled with resolve. "Elon, are you okay?" She nodded hesitantly, clearly shaken but grateful for his intervention. The tension hung in the air for a moment longer before the men, realizing they had lost their audience, muttered under their breath and left the cafe. The door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing through the room. The cafe slowly returned to normal, the patrons letting out quiet sighs of relief. The waitress approached Elon's table once more, her voice shaky but sincere. "Waitress, thank you. You didn't have to do that." Elon gave her a reassuring smile. "Elon, sometimes doing the right thing is the only choice." The next day, however, the waitress found herself fired by her manager, who claimed that her interaction with the men had caused unnecessary drama. Devastated and unsure of what to do, she returned home, her mind racing with worry. But then, the shock of her life came. To her surprise, she received a phone call later that evening. It was from none other than Elon Musk himself. Somehow, he had learned about her situation and wanted to offer his help. "Elon, I'm sorry to hear what happened today. You stood up for yourself and others, and that's something to be proud of. I'd like to offer you a new opportunity, something better." He offered her a position at one of his companies, a job that paid better and came with endless possibilities for growth. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the waitress couldn't hold back her tears. Her life had changed in ways she never imagined, all because she had chosen to stand strong and because someone had noticed. Sometimes doing the right thing comes with a cost, but in those moments when we choose courage over fear, the reward can be far greater than we expect. The Cafe Standoff, a test of authority and courage. The cafe was calm, bathed in the golden glow of a lazy Sunday afternoon. Elon sat alone at a small table in the corner, sipping his black coffee and enjoying a slice of apple pie. His expression was calm and composed. Not a single trace of fear or unease crossed his face. Instead, his gaze swept over the room briefly, then returned to his pie, as if the commotion around him didn't exist. The door swung open with a loud creak, and a group of bikers strode in, their boots thudding heavily against the wooden floor. At their helm was Roy, the leader, a tall man with a skull tattoo etched prominently on his forearm. His presence was commanding, his energy intimidating. Roy's eyes scanned the cafe with the confidence of a man used to having control, until his gaze landed on Elon, quietly seated in the corner. A sly grin spread across Roy's face as he leaned toward his group. "Well, look at this," he drawled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A lonely gentleman sipping black coffee. Looks like you've wandered into the wrong place, pal." Elon didn't respond. He didn't flinch, didn't look up. He simply sipped his coffee, letting the silence speak for itself. Roy raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. He shrugged nonchalantly and sauntered toward Elon's table. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice laced with mockery. "Deep in thought, are we? Or maybe you're trying to pose as some sensitive, brooding writer." Elon finally lifted his head, his gaze steady and unflinching. His voice was calm, low, yet carried an unmistakable undertone of authority. "Just enjoying a quiet Sunday," he replied evenly. Maybe you should do the same, instead of making a scene. The subtle but pointed reply made Roy pause for a split second. His grin faltered, but he quickly recovered, breaking into a loud, boisterous laugh that echoed through the cafe. His crew joined in, their laughter filling the air like a challenge. "Enjoying yourself, huh?" Roy sneered. "All right then, let's help you enjoy it a little more." Without hesitation, Roy reached for Elon's slice of apple pie, picking it up and twirling it in his hand as if it were a toy. "Is this the kind of dessert rich folks eat?" he jeered. "Smells pretty good, I'll admit." Elon remained silent, his calm demeanor unwavering. He gently placed his coffee cup back on the table, fixing Roy with a piercing gaze. When he spoke, his voice was firm, his tone like steel. "If you've picked it up, then eat it. But remember, it's not free." The remark was unexpected, cutting through Roy's arrogance like a knife. He froze briefly, his grin flickering as if Elon's words had struck a nerve. Yet he quickly masked it with another round of loud laughter. But this time, there was something different in his laugh, something forced. A smaller, fiercer-looking biker stepped forward, his tone sharp and mocking. "Looks like this guy's got some confidence," he spat. "But tell me, do you really think confidence is going to save you?" The atmosphere in the cafe grew heavier with each passing second. A few customers quietly got up and slipped out, eager to avoid the brewing conflict. A young woman whispered to her friend as they left, "Let's go. We don't want to get involved." An older man near the counter sighed, shaking his head. "This isn't going to end well," he muttered under his breath. Behind the counter, Anna, a young server, stood frozen. Her heart raced as she watched the scene unfold. She clutched a coffee pot tightly, her knuckles white, her mind torn between fear and the growing need to do something. Meanwhile, Roy leaned closer to Elon, his smirk widening. He tapped his fingers on the table, his tone mocking and probing. "Tell me, who are you really? You don't seem like you belong here, or maybe..." His eyes narrowed. "You're just someone trying to hide from something." Elon met Roy's gaze head on, his expression unchanging. He calmly sipped his coffee, letting the silence stretch before speaking. His voice was low, deliberate, and carried a weight that silenced even the restless bikers. "Who I am doesn't matter," Elon said, his words cutting through the tension like a blade. "But if you don't know how to respect others, then this isn't the place for you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Elon's reply hit like gasoline poured on a smoldering fire. Roy's grin vanished, replaced by a shadow of anger. He slammed his hand onto the table with a loud thud, the sound echoing through the cafe and making the remaining patrons flinch. Just as the situation threatened to spiral out of control, a trembling yet firm voice rang out. "Stop it!" The room froze. All eyes turned to Anna, the petite server, who now stood face to face with the intimidating biker gang. Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve was unshakable. Her voice, though shaking, carried a surprising strength. "No one is allowed to harass our customers here," Anna said, her words clear and steady. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still. The bikers stared at her, surprised by her courage. Even Roy, towering over her, seemed momentarily taken aback. Anna took a step forward, her heart pounding so loudly in her chest that she thought it might burst. But something deep within her told her she couldn't back down. "This is a cafe," she said firmly, her voice growing steadier. "Not a place for causing trouble. If you'd like to order something, I'll be happy to serve you. But if you keep disturbing our customers, I'll have to ask you to leave." Roy tilted his head, his expression a mixture of surprise and amusement. He chuckled darkly. "Well, well, look who we have here," he said. "A little server playing sheriff." Turning to his group, he let out a laugh so loud it filled the room. "Did you all hear that? She's asking us to leave." Another biker, shorter but with an even more menacing air, clapped his hands slowly in sarcastic applause. The tension in the cafe grew unbearable as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Yet despite the fear swirling around her, Anna held her ground. "Brave, huh? But I don't think you want to get involved in this, little girl." Anna took a deep breath. Her voice wavered slightly, but her gaze never left Roy's. "Anna, I don't care what you think of me, but everyone here deserves respect. You have no right to disturb them, and you certainly have no right to harass that customer." Roy crossed his arms, his eyebrows arching in mock surprise. "Roy, that customer? You mean this guy over here?" He gestured toward Elon, then burst into laughter as though Anna's words were the punchline of a bad joke. "Roy, look at him. A guy sitting there quietly, not saying a word, and you think he needs protecting? Come on, little girl. Don't play the hero. It's not worth it." Anna turned to look at Elon. The man still sat calmly, his expression unshaken, but there was a faint spark of something in his eyes. Respect, admiration. That look gave Anna the courage to continue. With a firm resolve, she stepped forward. "Anna, maybe he doesn't need my protection, but I believe no one deserves to be treated like this, no matter who they are." The cafe seemed to hold its breath. A few customers nodded quietly, admiration in their eyes as they watched the young woman stand her ground. But not everyone agreed. Near the counter, an older man muttered to his companion. Older man: "Brave, sure, but she's inviting trouble. This isn't worth it." Roy took a step closer, his gaze sharp and piercing like the edge of a blade. "Roy, and what if I don't leave? What are you gonna do, call the cops?" He looked her up and down, his smirk curling mockingly. "Roy, or do you think I'll just listen to you because you're acting all tough?" A soft sound broke the tense silence, a coffee cup being placed deliberately on the table. Elon had set his mug down, the faint clink echoing through the heavy atmosphere. He raised his head, his voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Elon, I think she's doing the right thing, and if you're smart, you'll listen to her." Roy whipped around, his face twisting in anger at the interruption. "Roy, and who the hell do you think you are to tell me what to do?" Elon rose to his feet. He wasn't as physically imposing as Roy, but his confidence filled the room. Every step he took carried a quiet power. "Elon, I'm someone who believes that kindness and respect matter more than strength. No matter where you are, you might not care about that, but I know she's right, and you're wrong." Roy stared at Elon, his fists clenching tightly. His face reddened with fury, but he couldn't find the words to argue back. His ego was bruised and his anger boiled just beneath the surface. A second biker, one with a shorter fuse, finally snapped. Second biker: "All right, enough of this. I don't care who's right or wrong, but I can't stand this fake high and mighty crap anymore." He lunged forward, raising his hand to shove Elon. Anna's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Anna, stop it!" At that very moment, the piercing sound of police sirens sliced through the tense air outside the cafe. A staff member had discreetly called the authorities the moment tensions began to rise. Two officers stepped inside, their eyes quickly scanning the scene. They gestured firmly for the bikers to stand down. A few customers sighed in relief, while others watched the scene unfold with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Roy let out a derisive snort but held his tongue. One of the more hot-headed bikers resisted, earning himself a pair of handcuffs before being escorted out. The others received stern warnings before begrudgingly leaving the cafe. As the last of the bikers walked out, the tension in the room remained thick. The cafe's once lively atmosphere now felt heavy, like the air after a passing storm. Anna stood frozen, gripping her serving tray tightly. She could feel every pair of eyes in the cafe focused on her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let her fear show. Elon walked over to her, his voice warm and sincere. Elon, thank you. You've taught me something not everyone understands. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it. Anna offered a faint smile, though her hands still trembled slightly. Her gaze, however, remained steady. Anna, I just think this world needs more people like you, and fewer people like them. As the police left, escorting the aggressive bikers out, the cafe fell into an eerie silence. Customers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of unease and bewilderment. Anna stood motionless, her tray trembling slightly in her hands. Her heart raced, not from fear but from the raw emotion of the moment. She had stood her ground, and though the storm had passed, its echoes lingered in the quiet cafe. Near the door of the cozy cafe, a hushed yet frustrated conversation between two women pierced through the morning hum. Customer 1, what a hassle. This place used to be so quiet, and now it's anything but relaxing. Customer 2, exactly. Nobody wants to deal with this kind of drama on a Sunday morning. At a nearby table, an elderly man sat clutching his coffee cup with trembling hands. He raised his voice, his tone tinged with disapproval. Customer 3, she didn't have to get involved. All she did was make things worse. If she'd just let them do their thing, it would have been over quickly. Each comment felt like a sharp knife cutting into Anna's chest. She stood behind the counter, her posture upright and steady, but her eyes betrayed the sting of their words. She hadn't expected praise, but she had at least hoped for understanding. Anna inhaled deeply, forcing herself to focus on her work, but no amount of composure could shield her from the murmurs swirling around the room, like whispers of judgment carried on an unforgiving wind. From behind the counter, Mr. Smith, the cafe's middle-aged owner, stepped forward. His salt and pepper hair and hurried demeanor gave him the air of a man perpetually juggling too many things at once. He noticed the dissatisfied glances from some customers and frowned deeply. Mr. Smith, Anna, I need a word with you. Without waiting for her response, he turned on his heel and headed toward the back of the cafe, motioning for her to follow. Anna hesitated for a moment, her heart sinking before trailing after him into the small back room. Out of earshot from the customers, Mr. Smith wasted no time. Though his words were meant for her alone, his frustration carried clearly through the tight space. Mr. Smith, what were you thinking? This is a cafe, not a police station, and certainly not a stage for heroics. Our customers come here for peace and quiet, not chaos. Anna straightened her shoulders, her voice steady but soft. Anna, I just wanted to protect him. He didn't do anything wrong. Mr. Smith ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mixture of exasperation and weariness. Mr. Smith, I know. But you have to understand, Anna, that's not what we're selling here. People come here for comfort, for relaxation. And now, look around. Half the customers walked out. This place doesn't feel peaceful anymore. That's the problem. Anna bit her lip hard, struggling to keep her emotions in check. His words, though cold, weren't entirely untrue, but that didn't make them any easier to hear. Her voice trembled slightly as she replied, Anna, so what are you saying? That I shouldn't have done anything? That I should have just let them do whatever they wanted, even if they were harassing someone? Mr. Smith sighed heavily, his frustration softening into something more like resignation. Mr. Smith, I'm not saying that, but it's not your job to handle things like this. It's not professional, Anna. Actions like that could cost us even more customers. Anna stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She didn't respond right away. A chasm seemed to open between them, a quiet clash of values. On one side, her belief in doing what was right. On the other, the practicalities of running a business. Her silence spoke volumes. Finally, Mr. Smith shook his head, his voice firm with finality. Mr. Smith, this can't happen again. If something like this ever happens in the future, I need you to focus on your job, serve the customers. No more interference. Is that clear?" Anna lowered her head, her voice barely audible as she replied, "Anna, yes, I understand." As Mr. Smith walked away, leaving her alone in the back room, Anna stood motionless. A wave of emotions crashed over her, anger, sadness, frustration, and loneliness all tangled together. She didn't regret standing up for what was right. But the reprimand, combined with the cold stares of some customers, made her feel more isolated than ever. Returning to the counter, Anna resumed her work, her movements careful and measured. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone, but every so often her eyes darted toward Elon's table. The young man sat there quietly, his demeanor calm but thoughtful. He hadn't said a word since the incident, but his presence seemed heavier, as if he carried the weight of something unsaid. As the cafe began to settle down, Elon finally stood up. He walked slowly toward the counter, his steps deliberate, his presence both steady and purposeful. When he reached Anna, he spoke in a voice that was warm and steady. "Elon, are you all right?" Startled, Anna looked up. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She was surprised to see the genuine concern in his eyes. She nodded, forcing a faint smile. "Anna, I'm fine, thank you." But Elon didn't leave it there. He held her gaze, his eyes reflecting something deeper, a quiet respect. "Elon, what you did today, not everyone has the courage to do that. Thank you, not just for standing up for me, but for doing the right thing, even when no one else dared to." Anna lowered her head slightly, her voice soft but firm. "Anna, I just couldn't stand by. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness. You know that better than anyone." Elon smiled faintly, though a hint of thoughtfulness lingered in his expression. "Elon, you're right, and you reminded me that in a chaotic world, sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up for what's right." For the first time that day, Anna felt the faintest flicker of warmth in her chest. Elon's words didn't erase the sting of what had happened, but they gave her a glimmer of reassurance. She had done the right thing, and though the path she walked might be lonely at times, it wasn't without meaning. As Elon turned to leave, Anna watched him go, her heart a little lighter. The murmurs of disapproval from earlier still echoed faintly in her mind, but now they were drowned out by the quieter, stronger voice of conviction. A conviction that, no matter the cost, kindness and courage always mattered. It takes one act of kindness to change everything. As Elon returned to his table, the cafe remained tense. Some customers had already begun to leave, their expressions ranging from irritation to indifference. Near the door, a woman shot Anna a withering glare before stepping outside. Behind the counter, Mr. Smith sighed heavily, shaking his head as he stared at the empty chairs left behind. Anna stared at her hands, emotions swirling in a storm of conflict. A touch of regret mingled with a glimmer of pride, but a deep sadness weighed heavily on her chest. Elon left the cafe shortly after, saying nothing more as he walked out the door. Yet, before stepping fully into the evening air, he turned back one last time. His eyes rested on Anna. It was a look of quiet admiration, a silent acknowledgement of the courage it took to stand tall in the face of adversity. Monday morning brought warm sunlight streaming through the curtains of Cozy Brew, painting the cafe in a familiar golden glow. Customers came and went as they did every day, but the atmosphere felt heavier, laden with the memory of what had transpired the day before. Anna stepped into the cafe, her eyes tired from a sleepless night. She told herself to focus on her tasks, to stay busy, and to not dwell on the past. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the quiet sadness that lingered in her chest. Suddenly, the soft chime of the cafe door rang out. Outside, a sleek luxury car had just pulled up in front of the cafe, drawing the attention of everyone inside. All heads turned toward the entrance. This time, Elon Musk didn't walk in wearing jeans and a baseball cap. Instead, he entered the cafe dressed in a tailored suit, exuding confidence and authority. Yet, despite his commanding presence, he still carried an air of approachability. Two bodyguards flanked him, standing on either side of the door, emphasizing that this was no ordinary customer. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted instantly. Conversations near the door ceased, and all eyes were drawn to the powerful figure who had just stepped inside. Elon walked straight toward the counter where Anna was standing behind the espresso machine. Her heart began to race as a flood of thoughts ran through her mind. Why is he here? Is he upset about what happened yesterday? When Elon stopped in front of her, his gaze was serious but not unkind. "Anna," he began, his voice steady yet gentle, "yesterday you did something not many people would have the courage to do. You weren't just brave, you demonstrated something this world desperately needs: integrity." Anna froze, unable to speak. She didn't know how to respond, but the emotion in her eyes spoke volumes. Elon's voice carried a quiet strength that commanded the attention of the entire cafe. Even those who had initially tried to avoid staring now leaned in, listening intently. "Anna, I'm not here just to thank you," Elon continued. "I'm here to extend an invitation. Tesla is always searching for people who are willing to stand up for what's right. I'd like to invite you to join our social welfare foundation. There, you can continue to uphold the values you believe in, not just in a small cafe, but on a much larger scale." The cafe fell silent. Anna stared at Elon, her thoughts swirling. She had never dreamed that her actions, taken in a moment of courage, could lead to something so extraordinary. The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath as Anna struggled to process what she had just heard. She had once dreamed of an opportunity like this, but never in her life did she think it would come in such an extraordinary way. "Elon, I don't know what to say," Anna finally stammered, "but I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity. I'll do my very best." Elon smiled softly, his expression warm and kind. "Sometimes all the world needs," he said, "is for someone to stand up at the right moment. Yesterday, you did exactly that." Behind the counter, Mr. Smith, the cafe's owner, stood frozen. His face had gone pale. He couldn't believe that the man Anna had defended yesterday was someone as influential as Elon Musk. The other customers, one by one, began to look at Anna differently. If they had doubted or criticized her actions yesterday, now their gazes were filled with admiration and even a tinge of regret. Near the door, a woman leaned toward her friend and whispered, "She's truly brave. I feel terrible for judging her yesterday." "Me too," her friend replied. "I wish I had the courage to do what she did." Before leaving, Elon turned and looked around the cafe. His gaze was steady, his voice calm yet full of weight. "Freedom," he said, "is not just the right to do as you please, but the responsibility to stand up for what is right. If we fail to act against injustice, can we truly call ourselves free?" His words echoed through the room, leaving everyone silent. It was as if each word had etched itself into their minds. Elon left the cafe, but his presence left a lasting imprint. Anna watched him go, her heart swelling with hope. Yesterday, she had thought of herself as just a small cafe worker. Today, she realized that even the smallest actions could lead to profound change. Later, Mr. Smith approached Anna. His voice was low and his eyes reflected remorse. "Anna," he began, "I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I failed to see what you did, but now I'm proud to have an employee like you." For the first time in days, Anna smiled, a genuine smile that lifted the weight from her heart. She stepped out of the cafe, ready to embark on a new chapter of her life. She left behind her old workplace, but carried with her a powerful lesson. Standing up for what's right, even just once, can change everything. The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs brave ones. And sometimes it all begins with a single cup of coffee. Lesson to reflect on: courage isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard. We often underestimate the ripple effect of our actions, but moments of bravery, however small, can inspire others and lead to extraordinary opportunities. Anna's story reminds us that kindness and integrity can transform lives. It's a call to action for all of us, to stand up for justice, to defend those in need, and to embrace the chance to make a difference, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Because sometimes the simplest actions, like standing up for someone in a cafe, can change the world.